What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some patch highlights for Baldur's Gate 3's patch 7, which is coming up on the final patches for the game itself. But in particular, I would say the big things to note here are properly integrated modding, both in terms of the game and the release of the toolkit as well, alongside the addition of several evil endings, adding a bunch of new cinematics to the game, alongside a host of other little changes worth talking about. But right away, I mentioned that this is coming up on the last patch for the game. This itself is not the last patch. They still have plans to add things like proper crossplay as well as the photo mode, but they made it very clear in their patch announcement over on Steam that they were coming up very quickly upon what will eventually be the last patch for the game. Jumping in from there though, let's talk about those new ending cinematics. Now luckily, where I played this game a metric ton since it came out, I had a whole bunch of saves and stuff ready to go and I could pop in and test a bunch of these. Now I obviously don't want to spoil all of these for everyone, so I'm just going to show, I would say, one of the most generic bad endings you could possibly get in the background. But ultimately, this patch really fleshes out all of the evil possibilities that you could have taken, both with your origin characters or as a unique character, and prevents a whole host of options to really expand upon the ending there. I've seen about 8 or 9 of the 13 that they've added already, and I have to say, for the most part, really great. There is one sort of broad through line I wanted to mention though, because it's what stuck out to me the most, and that is that, while not, I would say, a direct intention of these endings, a sort of side effect is that these evil endings now give a proper consequence to abusing the illithid powers. Now previously, you could use these powers pretty willy-nilly. There was basically no consequence for doing so outside of a couple of checks here and there that, you could honestly just work your way around pretty easily. But now with these evil endings, how much you used those powers will come into play in a much more, I would say, meaningful way, at least for me personally, and I thought that was nice to see. Now, along the way to getting some of those evil endings, you're bound to come up against some interesting challenges, boss fights, etc. So, to that end, if you just so happen to be playing in Honor Mode, they've added new legendary actions to a handful of Honor Mode bosses. In particular, I would say they mostly added these to enemies that seemed like they really needed them but didn't have them, such as the Bulette in the Underdark, some changes to spectator enemies, as well as the leaders of certain Githyanki groups, etc. So in theory, those should be a little harder now. Another thing they did to Honor Mode that caught my attention was that they made the Honor Mode rule set, that is to say those legendary actions and things and how the game handles some specific rules around the action economy, available for the custom game mode. So the custom difficulty that allows you to tweak all sorts of stuff will now allow you to pick the Honor Mode rule set, which was not available previously, when you start a new game. You can't do it in a current game, but if you start a custom playthrough, you can now use the Honor Mode rule set outside of Honor Mode, which will let you engage with some of those legendary actions and stuff that enemies can take without actually having to play Honor Mode, which I thought was a fantastic change, especially since it was only previously available by starting and failing Honor Mode but choosing to continue it. But that brings us to, obviously, the biggest highlight of this patch by far, and that is fully integrated mod support. So with this comes the release of the toolkit itself, which is going to allow people to make mods, and while mods were already pretty popular for this game, they seem to have taken a full sort of Bethesda-style approach here, where now that the toolkit is available, they've integrated a mod manager directly into the game. So you'll be able to browse these and everything, install the ones you want, and then once they're installed, you can choose to activate or deactivate them, which I thought was a really nice touch. But while that's fantastic to see, I think it is especially important because Baldur's Gate 3 as a CRPG has already received enormous success that you don't usually see for this genre of games, and I think providing people an outlet to do something like, say, with Skyrim, where modding has given that game such a long life, I think adding it here has the potential to do the same thing for Baldur's Gate 3, which is honestly just fantastic. I hope it manages to give the game longer legs than it has already experienced. Now, while those are the major things, the patch does introduce a whole host of other little changes and fixes, adjusting some continuity stuff as well. For instance, there are a couple different groups that can promise you aid in the final battle that never showed up. Now that aid will arrive, they've added some new narrator lines for the Dark Urge to give them a little more reactivity in certain specific places, and a whole host of other things as well. I know a lot of people were excited about Astarion's new idle animations as an example, but I think that's just about going to wrap up this particular video. So Honestly, a very large, important patch. I'm really glad to see the endings fleshed out for the evil side of things. The modding support is fantastic, but even the more subtle changes were great to see. All in all, a fantastic patch, and just to be truthful with you guys here, I may not cover future patches, the last coming up on the final ones, depending on what they actually add. For instance, if those patches are just like a photo mode or fixing crossplay finally, I'm probably not going to cover those because it's not hugely necessary at this stage of the game, I don't think. But if those patches happen to do more interesting stuff than that, I may or may not cover them, so we'll just have to see. Just to give people a heads up, though. But either way, that's where I'm going to end it, so thank you so much for watching. Certainly hope you enjoyed the video, found it informative, enjoyable, all that YouTube jazz. But more than anything, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom, and have an amazing day.